With that, let's talk about what's happening downtown. Very controversial. The whole issue of a stadium in downtown Los Angeles. A lot of pros, a lot of people think there are a lot of cons as to potential issues on money, traffic, and but this could be a tremendous benefit, for instance, to the downtown area and the convention center in particular. So we're very privileged to have tonight the president of AEG. AEG is the company that proposes to build the football stadium at slightly over $1 billion, as well as put in, this would be in conjunction with the convention center. And there are a lot of questions, and we're very lucky to have with us this evening Tim Liragley.
Thank you, Richard. I've done a few of these community meetings and neighborhood groups. You run the best association. Very well done. Thank you. Very organized. Thank you for having us tonight in Sherman Oaks. A lot of people question why are we still out doing community groups after we've already gone through the council on the vote. And to me, this is no disrespect to the council. This isn't about the council, it's about everyone that lives in Los Angeles. It's your city, it's your money, it's your convention center. And so we're going to continue to go out and meet with all the neighborhood groups and community groups over the next 6 months until we figure out if we have a project or not. So I'm not going to get into great detail on explaining the project. I would hope you've probably seen enough of that where, like us, you might be sick of it by now with all of the articles and the media and the speculation. I'll give you 2 minutes on AEG because that probably hasn't been talked about a lot. Everyone thinks we're a quiet, mysterious company. We're really not. It's just I happen to have an owner and a chairman who is a quiet man. Lives in the same home, married to the same wife. I thank goodness he gets along with his wife every day, owning sports teams. He has 3 kids, lives in Denver, comes out here quite a bit. He just has never done a media interview in 25 years. He's low-key, he doesn't have an ego. And so because of that, a lot of people speculate. What I will tell you is we're a company that is privately held. We were a $5 to $6 billion company. This man has funded us out of his pocket. He has today almost $3 billion invested in Los Angeles. We are a company of 24,000 employees. We're headquartered here. We're headquartered in downtown Los Angeles. And we pay about $100 million in taxes in calendar year 2010 to the city, the county, and the state. So we have no horns. We're not out trying to pull a quick one. We have a track record where we've been here for 13 years. I live here. My daughter grew up here. My daughter works for me. My daughter lives in downtown Los Angeles. We are a company based on LA. We happen to be in the business of seeing things that scare others off and believing that we can do them. Staples Center downtown, everyone told us it would never work. Everyone told us people would never go back downtown. Everyone told us that privatizing an arena this day and age would not work. We did it. You have supported it. And last year alone at LA Live, we had 13 million people go through that campus. We built the headquarter hotel downtown. Again, for 25 years, they've been trying to get a 1,000-room hotel built next to the convention center. People said we were crazy. People said we were nuts. They were partially right on the condos. It is a tough sell today to be selling second home condos, but they were wrong on the hotel. The hotel has been the catalyst of turning our convention center around, and we continue to do remarkable things, including bringing groups like Microsoft to LA when they've never been here before. We looked at the old Millennium Dome in London that the government spent £1 billion on. Everyone gave up on it. They wanted to give it away. We stepped in, forged an alliance with the government. We spent almost $750 million, and today the O2 Arena is now the most successful arena in the world, and the #1 music venue in the world, and we are returning a healthy profit back to the City of London and the UK. So we're ambitious. We like big projects. We are the kind of people, and Mr. Anschutz in particular is not afraid of a challenge. We love LA, and I have watched the city, and in particular the jobs, disappear. And I remember just 5 or 6 years ago, people used to say that the city's official bird was the crane because there was so much construction in LA. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you drive around our city today, that official bird is now officially an endangered species. We are not building and we're not creating jobs. We do not own a football team. It is not my life ambition, nor Phil Anschutz's life ambition, to own a football team. This is not something we need to do, and quite frankly, there's not a day that goes by that I don't wake up wondering, why is it that we're doing this? This is not an easy task to pull off this day and age. But I will tell you what drives us, which is a 40% unemployment rate within the trade industry. These are the guys that for 10 straight years built Staples Center for us, built Nokia Theater for us, built LA Live for us, built the Ritz Marriott Hotel for us, and built the Home Depot Center for us. For 10 straight years, we kept thousands of these trade members busy. And when they were finishing the hotel, they kept on asking me, what's next? Where are you going to build the next project? Where are you going to build the next hotel? And today, we have a 40% unemployment rate, including over 3,500 of those trade workers that worked in our hotel as their last job within our family. Now, we're not obligated to go out and create the next job for them. We have no obligation at this point to take additional risk. We have almost $3 billion invested in the city, and we probably pay more taxes than almost any company in the city. But I believe we got to give this a shot, because we don't see cranes. We have a lot of people that are hurting. We got a lot of people unemployed, and I do not think we can count on the public sector anymore to create those jobs. So we're going to give this a shot. This is our 3rd time making a deal with the City of Los Angeles. So we know the rules. We are well polished on what works and what does not work in this city. And what we understand is this city's broken. I, like you, am upset. I've gone through 3 tires in my car because of potholes. And by the way, they've all been in the city of LA. So every time I see the mayor, he knows. I'm not happy about the traffic on Sunset. It takes me forever to get to and from my house. I don't remember the last time I got to use that off-ramp on Sunset to get back to my house. I'm not happy with what we are dealing with the 405. And I'm not happy a limited number of people ultimately are making all of us pay extra money to go build that freeway because they didn't like the design of the bridge. There's a lot of things about this city that I don't like, but it is my city. And so we're going to try to make this work in a way that we can look people like you in the eye and make a couple of simple claims. First and foremost, I know we can't take $1 out of the general fund. We are not only broke, but we can't fix the potholes. We have now taken $80 million from the captain's budget. Sit down with Charlie Beck, who I love, and he'll tell you we've taken $80 million out of the LAPD budget, $54 million out of the LA Fire Department's budget. We get it. So we went to the city and said we will privately fund the entire football stadium, period. No matter what it costs, no matter how we design it, no matter what we have to do to make that stadium work, we will put every penny up privately through AEG. 0 risk to the city. We're not asking you to loan us money. Let's take the stadium and we'll privatize it. We want to fix the convention center because that's the real economic driver here. When we made a decision to build a hotel in downtown Los Angeles, with our weather, our amenities, with our reputation around the world, we were 26th in conventions. We were behind Omaha, Nebraska. Now, the #1 driver of jobs in this economy today in Southern California is tourism and events. If we continue to rank behind Omaha, Nebraska, we are going to struggle with our economy. It is the one part of our economy that we can win at. We have the amenities to be better at that business. And in fact, The day we opened up the new Marriott Ritz Hotel, we went from 26 in conventions to 15 with one hotel. We had companies like Microsoft commit to come here because they suddenly had a hotel next to the convention center. But the biggest issue we have with our convention center is the convention center today ranks 15th in this country for space. We do not have contiguous space. If you've been down to our convention center, you know that the South Hall and the West Hall are not only separated, one is fairly new, thank goodness the big hall, and one, the West Hall, is old. So we are in a position where we know that in order to build a stadium, we need to take the old blue hall down and build a new hall that is contiguous to the I.M. Pei Hall, the main hall of the convention center. Currently, the old hall is 40 years old and it needs $80 million worth of work just to renovate it, just to get it up to speed. So if this doesn't happen within the next 2 years, they're going to have to take $80 million out of the general fund and spend it to upgrade that particular convention center. It won't fix it. It just upgrades it. It still won't be contiguous connected space. Our idea is to build a new hall adjacent to the main hall that will give us almost 1 million square feet that is all contiguous. So, and this deal's changed. I won't tell you the first deal, but the city did a good job. Nooch is right. We had a breakdown. I told Nooch we're dead. This deal's over. It does not pencil out. We all got together on a Saturday morning for 4 hours. He wouldn't even let me buy breakfast. We pieced it back together, and Jerry Miller got back in a room with all of his people, and eventually they figured out a way with Miguel and Jerry and the people at the city to make this deal work. So we went backwards on what we were asking for. Here's what we got. Here's what you give us. We have 2 bonds. The bonds and all the money from those bonds will be used to build a new convention center. The city will own the convention center. Now we're going to build it because we build better than they do. No offense, but we do. We build smarter, quicker, and cheaper than they do. So we'll build it. If it runs over its budget, we have to eat it. So there is a set budget we've agreed to with the city. Anything that costs more than that, AEG has to pick it up. When we're done, we give it over to the city, and they do with it what they please. We have no guarantees or no commitments that we get to run, manage, book, or operate the new convention center. For that, we will do 2 things. There's 2 bonds that are being floated. The first bond is the controversial one, $185 million. And that is a bond that is being floated by the city. So there's where the risk is. But what we agreed to do with the city is de-risk it. So we've agreed to a land lease above market rate. The city will say it's at market rate. That's one of the things Nooch and I disagree with. I go back to them and say it's above market rate for any fool that wants to come in and buy the old West Hall of the convention center and operate it. We are paying a premium. We enter into a long-term land lease that guarantees the city an annual payment that, when combined with the property tax on our stadium, and yes, even though it's privately financed, we've agreed to pay property tax, not just to the city, but to the county and LA Unified. So we're going to pay our fair share of taxes on all of this project. That property tax, along with that land lease, will be more than enough to do the annual payments of the $185, and we commit to that until those bonds are paid off. Then on the second bond, $80 million, we agreed to enter into a long-term advertising agreement for the advertising on the convention center and pay the city a minimum annual amount that will be equal to or greater than the bonds for that $80 million. And we will backstop that by AEG and LA Live. They will stand behind that payment. So if there is ever a breach, if there is ever a default, if there's ever a shortfall, for whatever reason, AEG is on the line for that. And if we don't ultimately step in and cure that breach, then the city owns LA Live. So we created a no-risk, no-dollar proposition for the city. We operate and build the stadium. We are responsible for 100% of the capital improvements on Farmers Field forever, for the length of this partnership with the city. And we can't do any of this without, number one, finding a team and entering into a long-term lease so we're secure, and two, putting up a bond to guarantee the minute we push dirt, within a 5-year period of time, there is a construction guarantee so that if for whatever reason we stop halfway through the process, there is a bond that will be equal to and adequate enough to finish off both projects so the city's protected. We are going to pay full taxes. We are even going to impose a seat tax on ourselves at Farmers Field to help pay for this project so that the general fund and the taxpayers are never at risk. By paying those taxes, we are going to generate $41 million a year back to the city, the county, and the state in new taxes. In addition to that, we're estimating 33,000 jobs will be created by this project, and we believe 5 new hotels are going to get built just in downtown Los Angeles, 2 of which have already been announced. In fact, they both closed today. So that's our quick vision. That's what we're trying to accomplish here. We received a 13-0 vote from the City Council. They were unanimous in backing this. We have a memorandum of understanding. That memorandum of understanding is dependent on 3 pieces now. One, we need to turn it into a definitive agreement. We're working with NUCHA staff to do that now, and that will take us until next year, early next year. 2, we have to complete a full EIR. We're not taking a shortcut. We didn't ask for any shortcuts. We are not asking for an exemption. That's a myth. We're going to do the most comprehensive, the most expensive EIR, gate the taxes necessary to pay the bonds for the convention center. Then we won't start. So we know we have to go get a team. Mr. Anschutz is committed to buying a piece of the team. We don't know if that's a third, a half, or all. But he's open to that conversation, whatever it may be. We're blessed that we happen to have an owner that has the wherewithal to do this. We did it with the Lakers and Staples Center. He's prepared to take that exact model and make it work for the NFL. So that's our vision. We got a long way to go. We're going to have to go through May of next year with our EIR before we believe that we can present something including a very, very aggressive and a very well-researched and a very expensive traffic plan. And one of the great pieces of this from our perspective is that stadium is going to have 2 primary uses. It's going to have 8 regular season NFL games, 7 of which will start on a 12:30 Sunday afternoon start. So we do not believe that's the traffic issue. The traffic issue is going to be that 8th game, which is a Monday night or a Thursday night game. Those games start at 5 o'clock. So one of the things we are aggressively working with the environmentalists, with the transportation authorities, with Caltrans, with LA Department of Transportation. We want to create a goal to make this the most environmentally friendly stadium ever. Now, we've already done that in our company. Staples Center is the most environmentally friendly arena today in the United States. Our new $1 billion hotel is LEED Silver and was voted by ULI as the best project in the United States last year because of our commitment to the environment. We not only are committed to waterless urinals, solar panels, and recycling and using and reusing materials for our stadium, but most importantly, we want this to be a mass transportation stadium. Now, we have all spent billions of dollars on light rail and the Metrolink. And all of those lines, every one of those lines, every vision that anyone has ever had for mass transportation begins and ends in downtown Los Angeles at Union Station. That is the hub of transportation for all of Southern California. We happen to have a light rail station 1 block away, the Pico Station. We happen to have a major light rail station, the 7th Street Metro Station, 3 blocks away. So what we have committed to and worked through with Metrolink and light rail is we are going to literally take economic benefits for people buying tickets to come to those football games and package them into the light rail and the Metrolink. We'll underwrite it if we have to. We will agree to a dash system on the Sundays when there are football games from Union Station to LA Live so we can augment the light rail from Union Station to the 7th Street Metro Station and the Pico Station so we can convince people to use light and heavy rail. Metrolink and us now believe 10,000 of the 65,000 people coming down on a Sunday afternoon for those games will use the Metrolink. And we will help underwrite that. We will take those people and put that into the cost of a ticket and give them a discount for their Metrolink ticket. With light rail, by 2016, with a little bit of luck, you're going to be able to go to Century City and get on the light rail there and take it down to our stadium and get right off at the Pico Station. We've agreed to take the Pico Station and double its capacity, and we'll pay for it. So that's part of our mitigation. I promise you, we're going to do the most comprehensive, most expensive, most aggressive EIR ever done in the history of Los Angeles. And if you don't believe it, I'd like to introduce you to my lawyers, because they are living up to it on a daily basis. So we have work to do. We will be, our environmental impact group will be before you again. We are studying 138 different intersections off of freeways in and around downtown Los Angeles. 3 times as many as the next highest project in the history of LA. We're going to know every impact of every intersection and off-ramp all the way to La Brea on the 10, for example. And they're going to be in the community and will continue to be in the community with public hearings and doing quantified work to make sure that we have a full transportation plan for those football games. The second big user are conventions. And we love conventions because for the most part, they do not get in cars. They're going to use light rail, they're going to use buses, they're going to use mass transportation. They come into LAX and they come down to our campus. And if we get these 5 hotels built, we envision a day when we do a Super Bowl for 78,000 people, where almost half of the people going to the Super Bowl will walk to the Super Bowl for the first time in the history of the NFL because of light rail and because of the hotel rooms that will be in downtown Los Angeles. So whether it be conventions or big events like Super Bowls or Final Fours, we want this to be seen, and it will be seen, as the most environmentally friendly, most unique, visionary mass transportation stadium ever built for our convention center. And we will go from 26 in conventions to 15 in conventions to when this is open with a roof that closes for Final Fours and for conventions. We will be 5 in the convention business. Not only with over 1 million square feet of contiguous space, but the number of conventions and the number of visitors we will now bring to our city. Our estimate and our consultants' estimate are we will be the 5th best convention marketplace in the United States. So that is our vision. It is, I know it's controversial because change is controversial. I know it's controversial because as a community, I don't think we have the greatest amount of trust for the NFL based on the last 16 years. After all, we're the only community in the United States that not only lost 1 team, but 2 teams in the same year. And by the way, I know that there is a lack of trust for our politicians, some of them, not Nooch. Everyone loves Nooch. I love Nooch. But there is a lack of trust on whether or not they're protecting your best interest. We get that. So this one stands front and center. We have a memorandum of understanding that is there for everyone to read. I will tell you the hardest, most difficult councilman in Los Angeles was yours. He may not yell the loudest. He may not do the most public meetings, but let me tell you, he was the smartest, and Paul did a great job. And I have unbelievable respect for him.
There were 2 Pauls.
Saul, sorry. But both Pauls did a good job. Krikorian was tough, but he was fair, and I like him. So was Paul Kretz. He was tough, but he was fair. So we met with every council person. Most of them were shaky at first. We got to the right place. We will continue to meet with them. We will continue to negotiate with them on the EIR. And we will continue to work with Nooch in his office to get a definitive agreement that is a definitive agreement based on the memorandum of understanding we've all agreed to. And we will be back before you to talk about traffic and mitigation with our entitlement team to make sure that we're doing this to make it the most usable, environmentally friendly stadium and convention center ever built. So with that, Richard, I'll turn it back to you.
Well, we have questions for you. As John Eisen is coming up, I have two questions here. You talked about AEG, and you talked about Mr. Andrews. What is your job? And you probably spend 100% of your time on the downtown LA, or what is your job?
Well, anyone that knows me knows I wear many hats. So, for example, I'm the biggest Kings fan, and I'm the governor of the Kings. I'm guaranteeing you here in the next 2 years they're going to win a Stanley Cup. So, trust me on this. Martha's sitting here shaking her head going, don't promise the Stanley Cup. But this team's really good. We also own the Galaxy. We just made a great trade to bring in a striker, Robbie Keane, leading striker in the history of Ireland. So we own a lot of things. We do a lot of things. I'm involved in all of it. But right now, this is my passion, and this is my second job.
Okay, one final question. You talked so favorably about Nooch, the city attorney. I thought the two of you were at war about a year or so ago.
Yeah.
War. I mean, I don't mean, you know.
We had a disagreement.
A disagreement? That's not what I read.
Anybody in this room that's married, have a fight with your wife or your husband, whoever wins or loses in that fight, the next day you get up and have breakfast together, and you have a mutual respect that you don't want to replay that day. We had a disagreement. We sat down. The one thing I'd say about Tim, he's not afraid to talk. And I'll tell you, when we talk, just like you have a fight with your wife, we don't hold any punches. I mean, we're pretty honest with each other, are we not?
Yeah, but we're not married, just for the record.
You are my type, but I'm sorry.
You know what? You and I are spending more time than we are with our wives. That's our problem.
But I'll tell you this: we've had very honest, frank discussions, and we don't pull any punches. He's a big guy; he's as big as I am. I'm sure that I'm not going to hurt his feelings, and you know, for all the stuff that I've read, he's not going to hurt mine. So at the end of the day, I can tell you the things that he talked about today are true. It sounds. Somebody tells you that it sounds too good to be true. It's usually not. The key to doing this now, as I said at the beginning, now that you've heard the project, we have this memorandum of understanding. The key is sitting down, and I'll tell you honestly, we'll sit down probably 4 or 5 times, he and I, on a Saturday or 7:30 in the morning on a weekday before work starts, and kind of go over some of the issues to make sure we don't stall. The key is to work to yes, and we have to write that MOU, the memorandum of understanding, and our agreement has to reflect that. And if it reflects that, folks, we have ground jewel. This is probably the biggest project that this city will ever undertake. It's a great thing for the city if it's done the way we have it sketched out to do. Would you not agree?
Yeah.
But I'll tell you honestly, there were a whole lot of times during the portion of this, he would call me up swearing at me. You know, well, not swearing, but you know, calling me names.
I probably want some fortune.
I mean, the project was dead. He says, the project's dead, the project's dead. And I said, let's just sit down and talk. And because you have to be on the same page. You got to understand what this project is going to do and how we can get there and still be true to you folks. I can't look you in the eye and say, hey, it's not going to cost you a dime, and then all of a sudden you look like you're paying through the nose. And so we have to be true to that. And Tim's, I'll tell you, to Tim's credit, our office stayed in the deal. Tim could have politicked to get my office out of the deal and have a private lawyer be hired by the city to represent you folks. And Tim didn't do that. And he let us stay in the deal in terms of, because we were going to protect you guys. And I would have probably complained all high hell if that would have happened. But he didn't, to his credit. And he sat there and he negotiated like an honorable guy. We had differences back and forth, but the deal's done. And now all we have to do is write it up to reflect the MOU, and we'll be fine. And I'm very proud of both AEG and the City of Los Angeles, the negotiating team that put this bill together, because it's really good for the city.
Thank you, John. Any questions?
How's that, Tim?
Thank you.
We have so many excellent questions, and we'll try to get through as many as we can, as quickly as possible. So the first question we have from Jay Weitzler is, you've told us about how much wealth your company has and your owner has, and how much revenue is going to be generated by all this. Why is the city quoting any bonds? Why don't you just pay for everything yourself?
Good question, because one, we don't own the convention center. We're willing to take risk on backstopping it. We're willing to take risk on building it right and the overages if we don't build it on time and on budget. But we don't own it, we can't own it, it's not in the city's best interest. So we will turn it back over, and they're gonna own that convention center, and we in turn will pay them more money from a land lease and from an advertising commitment over a 25-year period of time than the bonds for the convention center, even though we don't own the convention center. Look, I wish we didn't have to do anything with the convention center, but two things are a reality. One, if we don't fix it, then there's an $80 million tab coming just to renovate it, even though it's dysfunctional. And secondly, if we don't make a commitment on a industry that we are prepared to grow the right way, this city is going to continue to go backwards on property values and jobs.
Next.
Next, we have a number of questions from Terry, George Winner, David Elsky, and basically those questions are, if the convention center is right there, why didn't you go somewhere else where you wouldn't be so crowded? Why not renovate the Coliseum? Why go to downtown Los Angeles?
So the Coliseum, as we all know, is probably now, I'm proud to say, the most politically charged issue in Los Angeles because of the corruption and the problems there. Renovating the Coliseum, forget rebuilding it, renovating it is going to be $100 million just to make it livable. And we ultimately have been down that road to make the Coliseum work, and the NFL wasn't interested. The reason we chose the site we did is twofold. One, it gives us the opportunity to get into the business of Final Fours, Super Bowls, X Games, big boxing matches, big UFC matches, big conventions in particular, and be able to get the biggest, most important events, not just in the United States, but in the world, to come here and fill up our hotel rooms. That's the vision, is by connecting it to the convention center, we get to 1.4 million square feet, and we're spending $50 million for a retractable roof, $100 million for the roof, $50 million on top of that to make it open and close, so we could do Final Fours here.
Bob Anderson asked, the key question is the realism of the revenue stream that's going to be generated by all of this. How do you convince skeptical citizens that the revenue stream is real and probable? And secondly, would you consider an independent citizens panel to review the revenue?
All good questions. So the way we structured the deal, all of the revenue streams that we have guaranteed to cover the bonds are contractually obligated income. So whether it be the advertising, whether it be the land lease, these are not sitting here trying to create projections of what kind of advertising revenue we generate or we don't generate. We give the city $5 million a year on the convention center advertising no matter what we generate. If there's a shortfall, we eat it. Then we take AEG and LA Live, the property, and put it behind that so that if we ever renege, they can take that property back. Believe me, we won't renege. So we have guaranteed contractually obligated income, and the only number that I use tonight that fluctuates is we're estimating we're going to generate $40 million a year in taxes. That may be low, that may be high. We think it's low. We think there will be more taxes generated. That is ultimately the reward back to the city for this vision and this partnership that we've created. And that may grow or that may shrink, but it will never, ever affect the general fund, and it will never, ever put the bonds back at risk to the taxpayers.
You mentioned that the projections on the number of people that would take public transportation. The rest of the people will be driving to the area. And Jay Wexler asked a question concerning parking. What do you project it will cost to park in the area? Where will they park? And are you tearing down present parking that the city receives revenue for?
I'll go backwards there. Yes, we're tearing down parking that's underneath the current old hall, but we've agreed to replace that parking and build 2 new parking structures. We will pay for those parking structures ourselves, so that's $80 million. We will give that parking to the city when they have conventions, so it will be their parking spaces, even though we built the garages, and they keep the revenue from those spaces. During our events, whether it be Staples Center or the Farmers Field, then we take the parking back. As to where people park when they come down there, the reality is there's 32,500 parking spaces within a 15-minute walk of Farmers Field. And although I would prefer we encourage people to take light rail, I know not everyone can do that. And those are not spaces controlled by AEG. So what we're not going to do is build a bunch of parking that we control and overcharge people for. We can make this stadium work without having to do that. If you want to spend $10 and park for an NFL game and walk 3 blocks, it'll be there for you. But you're going to have to walk 3 blocks. If you want to spend $50 and park next to the stadium and be able to walk to the game in your luxury suite, that'll be your choice. There will be a wide variety of options on pricing and 32,500 parking spaces within a 15-minute walk. And we've already gone out and made deals with those operators. So we can go back and put those parking spaces into our parking plan.
David Elsby had a question, same question concerning the parking. He also asked, what kind of traffic control will be provided by whom? Will it be the City of Los Angeles before and after the events? Who's going to pay for that? And what are you doing with the space when there's no football?
Good question. So on the parking control, it's LA Department of Transportation, the LA Police Department, and the LA Fire Department. We've entered into agreements with all 3. So on the day of a football game, a concert, a big soccer game, any services we use on behalf of the city, we will reimburse the city for all of those services. So we're going to pay for the parking, or for the Department of Transportation. We're going to pay for the light control attendants. We're going to pay for the LAPD. We're going to pay for the LAPD at Farmers Field and LAPD walking the campus. And we're going to pay for the LA Fire Department working the event as well for all of the events at Farmers Field. We're only going to use Farmers Field about 50 times a year. The rest of the time, it's going to be part of the convention center for breakout rooms, additional space, even flat space that we could use on the floor for things like the auto show or the gift show. So we are going to jointly book it with the convention center to try to find additional big events that tie into the conventions they already have. But we only envision 50 nights a year, including the new big conventions that will use the seats. And of those 50 nights a year, 8 regular season football games, 2 preseason games, probably 3 or 4 soccer games, a concert, a boxing or UFC event, 1 or 2 other kind of entertainment events, and then the rest of it are big events that book rooms, like the X Games. The X Games are prepared to move here permanently if we can get this stadium done, and that means we have about 20 to 25,000 rooms that we booked during that period of time. That's the #1 usage for that space when we're not doing football there.
The next series of questions concern football, the key to all of this. So Sidonia Lax asks, you don't have a contract with an NFL team yet. What if Ed Roski and his group get one? What's going to happen to this project?
We'll stand down and get out of Ed's way. Ed's a good man. I have nothing but respect for Ed Roski. If he can get a team done, then we'll back Ed's project. We will not build a stadium. We will not compete with him. But they've been doing this for a few years and they don't have a team yet. So we're going to keep on going down this path because we think it's the right place to build it, and we think that the lack of mass transportation in the City of Industry makes it the least environmentally friendly stadium ever built.
Herbert Moore asks, when do you think you will get a commitment from an NFL team?
That's a good question. We are out talking to teams. We are out going to games this season to attend games in various cities with various owners. We happen to know the majority of owners in the NFL because we do business with them in Major League Soccer. So we created Major League Soccer with the Kraft family who own the Patriots, and the Hunts who own the Chiefs, and Stan Kroenke who owns the St. Louis Rams. But we also know all the other owners because we book concerts in all their stadiums. So Saturday night, I was in New York with the Giants and Jets ownership for Kenny Chesney and the concert at the Meadowlands, which was our concert. We talk to these guys all the time. We're convinced we can get a team. It's going to require work. We're going to have to give them a sweetheart lease. We already know that. We know that they're not going to put a penny into the stadium. We know that we're going to have to build them a training center because they won't pay for that and enter into a lease for that. And we know we're going to have to write them a check and buy a piece of the team. I believe there will be teams lining up for that kind of deal, and I think you're not going to hear real momentum on that, except for speculation in the media, until after the Super Bowl. The NFL doesn't want teams beginning to talk about moving in the middle of their season.
So Jane Anderson says she's from San Diego. What's the chance of bringing the Chargers to Los Angeles? And then she has a footnote: leave the Spaniels in San Diego.
Well, that's a trick question. Ask her if she'd buy season tickets if it was the Chargers. Dean's a friend of mine. I've known Dean a long time. I'm a football fan, so I go to games down there. We have had conversations with them. They acknowledge it. We acknowledge it. But at the current time, I haven't talked to Dean in a while, and people think that's a fait accomplished. It's not. In fact, I talked to the San Diego mayor more often in the last 2 months than I've talked to Dean, because we're trying to help Mayor Sanders with his vision for an LA Live kind of entertainment district. So that decision as to which team is going to have as much to do, if not more, with an owner of a team wanting to move to LA. And so it's not as much, do we love Dean, or would he be an owner, or are they going to move? That's a question probably for Dean, or the other owners that are not going to get this kind of deal and not going to find a way to build a stadium where they're currently at.
There was talk that a second team was necessary to make this work. Is that not the case?
No. Second teams are tougher because it takes the building and conflicts it with what we really want to drive with the building, which is the big events and the conventions. So there may be a second team, but I can tell you our economics are based on one team. Our naming rights deal is based on one team, and I want to make one other point. We have not and will not talk to UCLA and USC. This building is not built around trying to steal UCLA from the Rose Bowl. They're not going to go, and we don't want them to go. It's a beautiful facility. And this facility is not built around USC and the Trojans leaving the Coliseum. They want to take control of that Coliseum and put a substantial amount of money into that building and renovate it. We support that. We're very supportive of that. We would wish that the political people involved with that would let USC go manage that building, because they'll do a better job of it. And if you don't believe it, look at the university. They're doing pretty well.
Kevin Bingham says, what's to prevent an NFL team from failing again in Los Angeles?
Well, they're going to sign a long-term lease. The lease is going to be legally binding, and the lease will be backed up by not only the value of the team, but the NFL. So one of the reasons we want to own a piece is we want to make sure this is done right, and it's the right team. What we will not do, and this is because of the character of Mr. Anschutz, we're not going to move a team here that disrupts the city, the neighborhood, the campus, or the stadium. You can read into what that means.
Paul Riley asks, what's a more important factor when trying to convince a current NFL team to relocate to Los Angeles? Team ownership or city council?
Well, I think we're past city council, and we shocked the NFL. They didn't think we'd get past the city council. That's been the problem for 16 years. We're past city council. I think the one hurdle they are very suspicious of still is the crazies that will sue us. We already have a guy named Billy Bob from Texas that's trying to pass legislation in Sacramento to block this project. He doesn't live here, doesn't work here, doesn't have a company here, but he's in Dallas. He had a project that didn't go his way, and the city revoked, or the state revoked the bonds, and he holds us somewhat responsible for that. We're not. It was the Attorney General of the state of Texas, but he's decided to go after us. We have to guarantee them that although we're going to do a full EIR, and although we're not going to ask for an exemption on CEQA, we have to guarantee them that the state will help us make sure there are no frivolous lawsuits just meant and aimed to either collect a paycheck or to come along and stop the project. And I believe we have found a compromise that will work with the state that does not ask for an exemption, does not take CEQA and knock it out, or does not do a shortcut on the EIR, but creates an arbitration process so that if someone litigates at the end of the day, we'll take it to binding arbitration and let them decide, and we'll live with those circumstances. That way, everyone's happy.
Okay, Jules, come up here, and we have one more question, then we're going to have a raffle, and then you can come up here, and Tim has promised.
Are you raffling me off?
Well, actually...
No, I gotta go home. I'm going to be in trouble.
We have tickets for the NFL.
The NFL, yeah.
Jules, come up here, and John, what's the question?
Final question from Ron Spiegel. He asked, why are people opposed to an NFL team in LA? What is the main reasons you've heard?
Well, we've done research and polling, and believe it or not, 80% of the city and 80% of the people who live here, and our polling showed they are for this when they understood one thing. They wrote two things I think are very critical. No new taxes, no public funds. That was number one. And number two was that there's a transportation plan that will help relieve the congestion instead of adding the congestion. But the fact is, 80% of the people are for it because what they know is we got a long haul here in this city. We got a lot of people that are out of work, and what they want is the private sector to jump back in here because the public sector, I'm not picking on them, but let's admit it, the public sector can't get this done.
Jules, do you have something?
Tim,
Jules?
you said that you wear a lot of hats.
Yes, sir.
Well, I've got a limited edition Sherman Oaks Soho cap.
Okay.
And hold on. Let me take a picture of this.
Jules, do any?
You know, Jules, with our new Irish player, I like the fact he agreed in there.
Here we go. Ready?
This is a lot better than any community group I've done. No one gave me a hat. Thank you very much.
Okay.